The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. For those of us who have never joined us before, welcome, and those who are returning, thanks for coming back. Hopefully this will be another exciting and insightful episode to unlock blind spots. That brings me to why I started this. A long time ago, I used to think my effectiveness in the world had everything to do with how much information I had in my head. But then I started realizing there are people who know stuff that I just don't know. And no matter how much I read, I just can't get there because I can stuff the information in my head, but experience teaches you. It gives you the perspective over time. There's no way I could have the experience of all those people and the intellect in my head. And those were all my blind spots. So if I could start finding a way to uncover and at least understand what those blind spots are and bring people into my life who could say, hey, Vinay, in the last 25 years, let me tell you what I figured out. Oh my gosh, that amplifies my power, but I get to do the same for them. And that's what this podcast is all about. It was about me finding my blind spots and exposing them, bringing people to the table who have been there, done that, have got the cuts, bruises, and scars to prove it, and the perspective that they've learned. So today, I've got a really exciting conversation that I'm looking forward to getting into. Dr. Tim Merrick. Tim, how are you today?
I'm all the better to see you, Vinay.
Well, we've always had great conversations every time we've gotten on the phone or video together.
We have.
So let me do just a bit of housekeeping here, and then I want to introduce you to why I brought Dr. Tim Merrick on for our podcast today. So on January 6th next year, I've got Elena Snyder, and we've got a podcast we're going to be talking about finding your voice as a leader. It seems like such a simple sentence, but some people go their whole lives never having actually lived their life because they don't lean into their own voice. Elena's going to spend a couple of minutes talking about how you can start to build that self-worth, that self-confidence around your own voice. Podcast worth listening into, I believe. On January 4th, I've got Jim Conti coming in. The biggest blocker to your success lies inside. He works with a lot of companies that are around sales and revenue, but people don't. Before I was a technical guy, I never got into the sales and the business development and corporate development side. I didn't realize that the hardest thing to do sometimes is inviting people to a path that they want to be on as well. And that success starts from within, and Jim's going to spend some time talking about that. But, that's really funny because all those topics kind of line up with where we're almost starting today. Dr. Merrick and I are going to be talking about this idea of empathy and compassion. Why care? Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Merrick. I think you'll get something out of sort of his background and who he is and why it's interesting, why I brought him on today. Go ahead.
And if it's okay with you, I'm just Tim.
Okay,
I mean, you can call me anything. Don't call me late for dinner. And I've been called a lot worse than anything you can call me. But I don't need the pretense. And if it's in any way that's going to block someone from hearing me because I've got a title, I don't want that.
Fair enough, and I appreciate you bringing that out there. So anybody who's listening into this today or in the future, feel free to chime in and give us your thoughts, your comments. You agree, you disagree. I don't think this is about being right. It's about getting the right perspective and standing in the right place and looking at the world, the universe in the right way. So feel free to chime in. And if Dr. Tim or Tim does not chime in, I've got to get myself used to that. If Tim doesn't respond or I don't, I'll make sure that one of us responds so we can get those questions answered. Let me tell you a little bit about Tim real quick, though. This is the part that I love about Tim. Contractor, chiropractor, coach, chef, chair of the board, and candidate for state senate. Seen the world from lots of different lenses. And I got to imagine that's given you some through line amongst all those things, even though you've been looking at the world in a completely different way. Wants to do everything once at least before he dies, except maybe skydiving. Extensive coach training, years of post-training mentoring with master coaches, and lots of work with clients in any sort of situation. Tend to work with a lot of men who are wanting to, I'll call it, reinvigorate or reinspect themselves, trying to step up to that next level, and might be running into this glass ceiling of their own creation. And how do you punch through that? Because if you look at, we're all creatures of habit. We start to build these same sort of patterns over and over again, consciously or subconsciously. At some point in time, we just start to limit ourselves from options, and we just don't see the world, even though it's standing right in front of our face sometimes. Dr. Tim, I'm going to get myself out of that habit there. Tim.
As long as you call me that with love, then we're good. Vinay, I'm good.
Tim, did I do a reasonable job of kind of summarizing a little bit of who you are? And is that a fair way to line this conversation up, that we put these own barriers in front of ourselves sometimes?
We absolutely do. And it fits perfectly with your podcast theme, blind spots. We find ourselves seeing the world through a specific lens that, for all intents and purposes, seems like reality. And we are convinced this is what is real. And then everything that we see out in the world, we compare to that vision of what's real, and we find a way to bring it into that vision. The only problem is that vision is something that we've created. So it can be very limiting. And like you said, I work with a lot of men. I work with a lot of men in the corporate world, which unfortunately still to this date means a lot of white men. Right? Now, when we're talking about glass ceilings, it would seem a little peculiar to talk about glass ceilings and white men, would it not? And yet we are all our biggest limitations, no doubt.
I heard someone talk about this idea. I don't know if you've heard of Sadhguru. Sadhguru had a fantastic conversation with some doctors at Harvard Medical School. And he said, there's a fantastic thing that we've been given as a gift. And when I first heard this, I kind of had to take pause just to process a bit. And he said, there's only one animal in the world, in the universe that we're aware of, that has pain as a gift. And he said, hear me out for a moment. He said, every other animal knows what its limits are. If you put a food in front of a dog knows I'll eat it or I won't eat it. It doesn't try to wake up at 2:00 in the morning when it's binge watching, Game of Thrones or whatever the case, and go back into the cabinet to eat it. It just says no, yes or no. Humans, on the other hand, can do that or will do that at times. And the pain is an opportunity for the human to know what their limits are. And where I'm trying to tie this together is that sometimes we go through these pains as individuals secretly, privately. We never share it with anybody, when in fact we don't know that it's something we can step through. Does that resonate with you at all, Tim?
There's two ways I want to look at that. Okay. First of all, absolutely. I mean, pain is just our way of waking us up. If we're walking through the woods and we feel blisters on our feet, it reminds us that we have physical limitations. We should be taking caution from this. But there's also the pain of discomfort that we experience emotionally, that we experience in our bodies, that I believe is also tied to the same basic evolutionary concept of keeping us safe. The pain of discomfort says, oh, I shouldn't do that because I don't know what the results will be. That might be very difficult for me. And that is the kind of pain that we need to really examine, because our defense mechanism want to keep us safe, want to keep us secure, want to keep us in a known world. And that is not where our growth lies. That is not where our inspiration will be fueled. And so I want to be careful of listening to that pain too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I growing up as a kid, I did lots and lots of sports, ran track, played football, played basketball, soccer, so on and so forth. And one of the things that was a through line for all of those different sports is my endurance, my ability to run long distances for extended periods of time. And I remember there's many, many times where my track coach, for example, would say, "Then I need you to go on a 45-minute run, and here's the speed that I need you to go at." 5 miles into it, I'm doing fine. The sixth miles, I'm starting to feel cramps on the side here. And the first thought there is, all right, that's a wall. I need to stop pushing. And I think what I'm hearing from you here a little bit is if there's an opportunity for investigation there. Is that the wall that is there and that's final? Or is it a wall that maybe there's something I need to dig down a little deeper? It's not up here in the head. It's sort of deeper within the core of me. Does that resonate as well?
Yeah, totally. So right. So you're running and you tear a hamstring muscle, right? I'm sorry. It's time to stop.
Yeah.
Right? But it is predictable that you will hit an emotional wall at some point while you push yourself to new levels. And the question is, when you hit that emotional wall, is that the time to sit down, or is this an opportunity to push through? And that's not a really discrete line, but one that you bring curiosity to, and one that you bring compassion and empathy to ourselves for. And if we give ourselves permission to really investigate that, I think it's incumbent on all of us to learn the skill of checking in with ourselves. I did a seminar. Oh my gosh, I must have been 22 years old, and I went on a weekend seminar with a kind of a kooky, crazy, wonderful woman who the theme of the weekend was learning to listen to the self with a big S. Okay, and how do you know the difference when you get that nagging thing that says I shouldn't be doing this? Is that your small self afraid of failure, afraid of the discomfort, or is that really? Can you really check in with yourself and say, hey, what's going on here? Why am I afraid?
So I'll tell you, that's interesting that you did that so many years ago. It took me a lot longer before I got to that point. I guess we all walk around along different paths at different speeds, right? I don't know that I've quite understood what that meant listening to myself, though. Can you walk me through that a little bit more for people who say, I don't even know what you mean right now. You're talking about listening to yourself. Who's talking? Am I just in my head? Am I listening to the voices in my head? Is that what you're suggesting? Talk me through that a little bit.
I think of it as my higher power, my higher self, my better nature. And what I notice is that my better nature speaks softly. My defense mechanisms can scream and shout and cry and whine. There's a sensation that I get when it's like, aha. But I think it's easier to recognize that space if you've been in it. So there is some practice. And is that sitting quietly? Is that mindfulness meditation? Is that going for these 10-mile runs where you're just with yourself? Everyone's going to have their own methodology. But I think in terms of self-mastery, it's incumbent upon us to learn who we are. And I've been working a lot with Manoj Krishna lately. I've introduced you to him, and he's developed this lovely little app that you can get for next to nothing. And it just walks you through a process of inquiry, right? So now forget what I said about an app. If you want to go find it out, go great. That's humanwisdom.me. But inquiry, just giving yourself the space to ask questions. What if I did? What if I didn't? Right?
So I always I think about when I was in physics. Physics is one of my favorite classes in high school and college. And I remember I give people this analogy all the time, the elastic and inelastic quick collisions that everyone used to do with the billiard balls, right? You run them into each other and you got to predict where the force goes. When they talked to me about it, when my teacher got up in front of the class and talks us through it, she walked through what was supposed to happen. But until I actually saw a concrete example, I didn't have that aha moment. So I want to give an example here of what that listening to your inside voices and tell me if I'm kind of aligned with you there. And I'm thinking about, look, a lot of the people who are going to be listening to this podcast are going to be business owners or senior leaders in a company, leaders of some sort in a company. You have a conversation with an employee, and it is very rarely do I feel black and white about an issue. There's usually many shades of gray, as in someone has done something that I did not appreciate in terms of how they talk to a customer. I bring them in, I sit them in my office and say, I don't want you to do that again, because that's just not the type of behavior that we like in this company. I need you to clean your act up, right? And I dismiss them on their way. But there's a little voice inside of me that says, it wasn't 100% their fault. Or there's a little voice inside of me that says, maybe I should have asked some more questions first, or maybe that wasn't the right approach. Is that the voice that you're talking about?
It sounds like you were coming from a place that you felt, when you pulled off this leader hat and you put it on and said, "This is the way it is." You were coming from a clear positionality, right? There was a strong judgment, and I'm not saying it was a wrong judgment, but this is how things are, right? And you said, "I need you to do this." Well, my guess is that that questioning came up in your mind that says, "Really? Do I really know all that? Am I really sure about all that?" In the large scheme of things, is that positionality the truth? Right? So I believe there's a part of each of us that really do want to cohere to some deeper, I don't want to get into too wishy-washy language here, but some deeper meaning, some deeper principle.
Yep.
And we know that there's parts of our job that don't necessarily align with that. Yeah. And your job may be to chew this person a new one, right? I don't know. I don't know what the culture is in your company.
Yep.
But what would, and then I'll turn this to you as a question, what would non-positionality look like with you and that employee?
That's right. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, lots of times I know when I talk to my employees in this situation or someone that I work with, when I come to a situation, I usually come in with my own narrative as to what I believe happened. I go to them and say, "Can I ask you a couple of questions? Because I have a sense of what I think happened. I'd like to hear it from your perspective, because looking at the same object from two different sides, one side is dark, the other side is light, right? It can be completely different. So coming in from the point of view of, all right, let me check my ego, let me check my narrative at the door for just a moment and just start asking with questions as to what they're seeing. Not trying to prove what I'm thinking is right so much as just seeking to understand, how do they see the world? As in, they saw a customer who was, I don't know, they went to their customer and their customer just had a fight with their child or an argument with their child, and they were already a little upset. And they knew that the only way they could have a conversation with that customer was to be a little more passive in the conversation because of the context that they saw. And I didn't really give them a choice, because I said, that's not the way we have conversations with people as a leader. So I think the answer to your question is, I mean, for me personally, when I come into a conversation, I always try to come in asking questions as opposed to believing I've got the answer. Right. Did I answer your question there?
Yes, fine, beautiful. I mean, it really is for you. What do you see as non-positionality, and what could that offer? Mm-hmm. And I hear a conversation is possible. Many different ways of seeing it is possible. But my goal in this situation is actually to have that employee become a better employee. Mm-hmm. Is a better employee the person who does what they're told, or someone who has looked at it through a new lens and made choice after choice after choice to do it in a way that is both better for the company and follows the company protocol?
Yeah.
I think about so many times when I was a kid, I used to listen to baseball games on the radio or on TV. And, I didn't know much. I mean, as a 10-year-old kid, and I'm listening to it, and, it's ninth inning. There's 2 outs. There's a man on base, and you're, 2 runs behind. Like, this is the do or die moment. And the manager pulls out the hitter who has a a 280 batting record,
Average.
average, and puts in a pinch hitter who's hitting like 97. I'm like, good God, what are you doing, man? What's wrong with you? But this manager has to not just worry about this game. He has to worry about the next game and the next season, and he's developing his players. And for some reason, he needed to send a message to the batter that he took out, and he needed to invite this other person to stand up and do what they can. So when you're having that conversation with your employee, is it a one-off? I need them to do what I need them to do this time, or are you trying to build a team? Leadership is about building that team and not just having the situation go the way you think it should.
I think we didn't. I didn't. I mean, you and I talked just before. We didn't have a set formula in terms of where this conversation would go, but that what we called the title of the specific title was empathy and compassion. Why care? It's almost as though we've arrived at that point, right? In terms of this conversation with this employee in this hypothetical sort of made up scenario that I kind of made up off the cuff here, right? Maybe we start first here. Help me understand. Empathy and compassion are two different words, and I think they're so used interchangeably. Can you give a little bit of an understanding as to what your perspective on those two words are and kind of how they interplay with each other? Because I think we should tie it to this example, if that's okay with you.
It's fine with me. I do think that people use them in different ways, and you'll have to pardon me. I have got a little dog here who just wants to be part of the conversation.
Welcome.
If I just kind of go back to the dictionary a little bit, empathy would suggest that I can feel what the other person's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I get them, right? Compassion might be more like I care. I care for what they're going through. I don't maybe have the capacity to understand how they feel, but I care. And I want to treat them in a caring fashion. How does that line up with how you have used the words?
It does. I'll use the words I think of it, right? Empathy is that seeking to understand, right? I approach the world from a place of wonder. I'm just in awe and wonder of, hey, there's things that I don't see. Empathy is me coming in and saying, what did you see, right? It may align with mine, it may not, but I'm not there to judge. I'm just simply here to receive, right? Compassion is me potentially taking some of the empathy and saying, I'm going to take some action on that. As in, I see that you were in this situation with this customer employee, saying to my employee, compassion is saying, I understand why you did that now. You know what? I may have actually done the same exact thing, right? Now I'm taking action on it. I'm changing what I do based on are we still in alignment there in terms of what that means?
Sure. I think you're saying that empathy is an experience and compassion is a bit of a verb. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And
I've often said that love is a verb. All the times people say, "But I love you." I'm like, let's see it.
That's interesting. Love is a verb. So we call this empathy and compassion. Why care? I mean, I think we started out with a little bit of an example here already, in sort of a manager employee kind of relationship, how the empathy is sort of leaning in with asking some questions, having a conversation first, truly seeking to understand, as opposed to just saying, hey, let me tell you what the answer is. Now, so many people have spent time in particular industries. They've been in a role, they've been in a industry for 25 years. And I've heard many people before say, I've been doing this for 25 years. Why do I need to listen to somebody else?
Ow.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how you respond to that, because when I hear that from people, I just bite my knuckle for a second and say, all right, we need to take a couple of steps back here. That's kind of the first thought. What goes through your mind when you hear something like that?
Well, I'm going to take a slight right turn on you here, and I want to think about that person, that man or woman who is so stock sure of themselves, and they might actually be, in terms of what their company needs, they might be right on top of it. I work with a lot of men in their 50s and up into their early 60s, and many of them are thinking about retiring. And many of them are losing steam and they just want to coast. They just want to coast. They just don't make me do something new. I just kind of want to. I've run out of steam. I'm not ready to retire, and I'll tell you what, that rots the soul. That space rots the soul. And I'm thinking about this person who already knows everything. They may be right on top of it for a little while, but I'm going to tell you, I'm concerned about that person because inspiration is about something new. Motivation comes from learning, from curiosity. What's going to keep this person engaged, in love? That certainty can help us to feel safe, but it is a very small box, and I'm afraid for the growth of this individual. So if nothing else, forget the team, forget the company. If we're talking about, as a coach, my job is, a leader of leaders in some ways, right? Leaders come and they might be the CEO, but still, if they've got that mindset, they're not growing. Their leadership needs to expand.
Let me play back to you a little bit of what I heard and sort of the analogy that went through my head. I know I'll talk about myself. Many times on Sunday night, I'm dreading the clicking of the talk, the ticking of the talk, right? Because I've got to go from that 2 days of low energy state to Monday, high energy state, active thinking again. I think that's why a lot of people regret that, or don't look forward to Mondays. They've got a case of the Mondays, right? Because I got to go low energy state to high energy state. And I think I heard sort of the analogy here, or the sort of the similarity here between when you're looking at that place of, I already know it's easy, it's simple. Things are on cruise control. But if things are in cruise control, if we go with the analogy of the car here, there are times when you need to brake and there's times you need to accelerate. Cruise control doesn't work all the time, right?
Absolutely.
You can get yourself into dangerous situations. You're not supposed to drive in city streets with cruise control.
It's not adaptive, right? It's not adaptive.
That's right. So if anything, for yourself, this empathy and compassion matter, because if not, it's almost as though you're just keeping yourself locked in cruise control. You're not adapting, right? And I think also what I'm hearing is sort of as a subtext is, or reading between the lines here is, look, the world continues to change, whether you like it or not. You're not wearing the same shirt that you did yesterday. The world changes. Change.
Today's strategy will work for today, maybe tomorrow.
That's right.
But we're constantly reinventing. And of course, what's one of the biggest problems that employers are having right now is retention. The great resignation, people realizing that, maybe it's time that they start making their life work the way they want it to. And so employers, leaders have a whole new layer of reasons to be curious and to be collaborative and to bring people in. People who are excited, people who feel connected, people who feel they have a purpose are much less likely to leave. So bring them into the decision-making process. You're still going to be the one to say, okay, yeah, let's look at how we could treat that employee next time. Let's look at ways that we could, or whatever that is situation that you had in the beginning. And in the end, their wisdom may not bring them to a place that is still within your cultural, company cultural bounds. And you might have to say, well, we can keep investigating that, but for now, I'm going to need you to be doing this. But you've asked for their opinion, you've brought it forth, and you're getting them thinking. We need to keep them involved and excited and being respected for the humans that they are. They might not know as much as you know about the company, but as a human being, they have no less value than you and I. I don't care what their title.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think we're a number of equals across the globe here. We already are. It's just that we have different responsibilities and different levels of risk. That's really what changes.
And the buck stops with you, so you are going to have to make some calls. But are you doing it from opposition, from positionality, from dictatorial sort of a setup, or are you going to try to bring everyone together and say, why do we do these? I did a retreat for a nonprofit. What do we say our purpose is? If we can all agree to that, now we have a measuring stick throughout the year to say, no, this is what we said, this is who we say we are. Can we get people to align with purpose? And then you can start talking about strategies and tactics that you use at work. But if we don't align on our purpose, then they're just following orders.
Yeah. So there's Tim, you'll, I think you've already know this. I love my analogies. I always talk to people in terms of a 300-watt light bulb versus a 300-watt laser, right? A 300, they have the same amount of power, but a 300-watt light bulb puts off lots of heat. Light goes all over the place. 300-watt laser, same amount of power, a lot less heat, but gosh, it'll burn through sheet steel. What a powerful thing, doing the exact same thing. And I think what I'm hearing from you is this idea that if we look as leadership, take that empathy and compassion as a way to start to get to laser focus. We're all heading, marching up the same hill, marching in the same direction. So much more powerful with the same exact energy that was already sitting there, sort of that latent energy. Is that how you see it?
I do. I love that. When you were talking about getting people, it's like, if you were taking a bunch of soldiers into battle, and we sometimes we read through these stories, and who are the generals that these people said, you know what, I will die for this man or woman, right? Because that's asking a lot. That's in the corporate America, we don't quite have the same level of risk. But when you have a leader that someone says, I would die for that person, I will go in and I will do what they say gladly because I trust this person. I resonate with this person. I believe in this person. How do we become that level of a leader, of a source of inspiration, aspiration,
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So now the question is, what does empathy and compassion, how does that leader use it? Because we know in the military, that's not always, those words are not always bandied about.
Yeah.
But there's a version, don't you think?
Yeah. So I have some young kids, and I always talk to them about this idea, sort of the proverbial battle scene with the king in front on, mounted on horseback with the sword raised in the air, talking to the 10,000 troops. I said, what do you think that king is saying, king or queen, is saying to all the troops? Are they saying, I want you to go into battle to die for me? No, that's none of them are going to go into battle to die for him or her. Instead, they say, your families, your livelihood, your children are at stake here. That enemy over there is going to take that from you. Are you going to let that? And everyone starts beating their swords against their shields, and they will die for that purpose. It's not because of the leader; they're dying for their own purpose, right? And I think this is where the impact. If you want to tie the empathy and compassion together, if you want to get people to go after that because they want to get there, asking you questions of how do I get there better, faster, more effectively, that's where empathy and compassion play a role, is it not?
Well, I'm suddenly wondering where we're going to bring this back to the blind spot.
Okay.
Because I think we're lined up on this,
Yeah.
and I know that at some point you want to talk about blind spots. Now, maybe the blind spot of that leader is saying, "Go out there and kill for me." Obviously, a blind spot because it's not inspiring.
Yeah.
They're not connected to that person. They don't know why that person might desert or fight valiantly.
Yeah.
But what do you see with the people that you work with in terms of, let's use these two metrics,
Yeah.
blind spot and the compassion empathy piece?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see these overlapping?
Yeah. So for me as an individual, right? I this is all I see of the world. I can turn around, but I'm not looking at this thing, right? I only see about 60 degrees of vision, maybe on my best day, right? So all this stuff right here, as far as I'm concerned, is my blind spot, right? I know what I think is behind me. You can actually see it, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's there, but I don't know that until I actually turn around and see with my own eyes. So my blind spots are what all the other people who are facing me can kind of see. So that's one side of it, right? Empathy and compassion is my ability to ask them, hey, what are you seeing behind me? So I don't have to take the time to turn around. So if my employees, for example, are out in the field talking to my customers, they're talking to my partners, talking to other people within the company, they can see what they're saying and saying, there's too much friction in this process here. It just doesn't work. I can't see it because I'm facing this way the whole time. I don't see the process breaking.
Yeah.
So this empathy and compassion gives me their perspective to be able to see that way. And I just have to ask. And they've seen it for the last 9 months. I get their understanding of the world that quickly. Does that dovetail those two?
I love that. As a doctor, I used to spend X amount of time with my patients. I'm sorry, it wasn't as much as I'd like. It wasn't as much as they'd like, but that's sort of just, the marketplace of medicine and healthcare. What they did spend a lot more time with is my staff. Coming in, checking in, saying hello, chit-chatting, etc. And then they spend a short time with me, and then off they go. And especially if I was busy or if I was in any way disconnected, I might lose really important information about that patient, what they're going through, what's happening for them. And my staff, they knew about the divorce, they knew about the children's difficulty in school. Yeah. And I've seen so many offices where the staff doesn't talk to the doctor doesn't talk to the staff. They have a formal professional relationship. And so the compassion, empathy thing is where all of us can be more interested in each other.
Yeah.
And now my staff comes to me and says, oh my God, did you hear about so-and-so? Oh no, I didn't. Can we, I'll call them before the end of the day, or please send them a note, a card, whatever, something to keep connected. And so, of course, the empathy and compassion to the patient, of course, is important there. But I'm saying right now that to keep the company running, we need to have that between ourselves so that we share that information.
Yeah, this was interesting. Just as you're saying that, I mean, I know I've been on a number of potential customer calls, right? I get off the call and I'm feeling charged up and excited about what's happening. And I usually like to have another set of ears or more on that call. I know a call about 3 weeks ago. I got off this. I was like, this thing is, we're the skids are greased. This thing is sliding. This is going to happen. Get off the call. First, I know a lot of people in my company that know not to get on the phone because I'm going to be calling them right afterwards. Because while it's still fresh in their head, I say, so tell me, what did you hear? What happened there? And I know on that call about 3-4 weeks ago now, the person said, gosh, they really don't understand what we do. And I got to tell you, you probably heard, I'm like, wait, what? Right? Were you on the same call that I was on? And what was so interesting, because if I had never even considered that there's this perspective that they're not getting what we do yet, they're maybe just liking my energy. Whatever it else it is, there's something else. So, the whole ready, aim, fire kind of thing. Our sights are not exactly aligned yet. And until I could yell at that person and say, what are you smoking? That was a great call. Instead, there's a space in between that allows us to get closer to what the actual truth is. And I think that's where the impact, empathy and compassion is, right? You start to see your blind spots. You ask those questions, you can start to get greater and greater alignment. Again, to the analogy of that king or the queen, right?
Some humility there to be able to hear the fact that you asked someone who was on the call to give you feedback. Good for you, right? You get that feedback, and then you're willing to listen to it. Because some people just say, no, you're wrong, out of hand, forget it. So it's not just empathy, it's also curiosity. There's also humility. There's a willingness to see things differently. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. I do think that the compassion and the empathy is foundational, though. I have it in order to be empathic and compassion. It sits on a level of maybe it's trust in the universe. I'm safe. I can afford to be compassionate. I can afford to really reach out here. I'm not running a hamster wheel 100 miles an hour, or I'm not having to protect my professional image, or something. So there's got to be, I'm okay. That has to be a bottom line. It's something big that I work with all of my clients is, can we first get to okay? I'm
Yeah.
okay, just where I can accept what is.
So this is a really important part. I love racing cars, and the most dangerous part of racing cars is usually when you're shifting gears, because you've got this car going at 6,000 RPM in fifth gear, or in fourth gear, and you're ready to shift from fourth to fifth. Just in that change, there's a little unsettling of the car, right? Because now all of a sudden you've got your foot on. I'm talking about a standard here, a manual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've taken weight off the rear wheels because I've tapped the brake, or I've come off that, and now that means the car is starting to lean on the front wheels a little more. There's a little bit of shift in bias, and I'm taking that time to shift, and then I put my foot on the gas again, and then it
shifts it again.
Yeah. So in that transition, you don't want to do that on a turn, because you don't want to be shifting bias of your car while you're trying to turn, because you're already asking your tires to do as much as they can, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing here is, look, that transition is going to be tough. You've always got to be very intentional in going through that transition. It will always be an unsettling period. And that's why so many people love these paddle shifters now, because the engine does it in 500 milliseconds as opposed to 5 seconds, right? So much faster, and it's less of a transition. But I think what I'm hearing from you is that transition to empathetic and compassionate has got to start with this place saying, okay, I will, being intentional where you are. You can't get to that next step unless you start in that place. Did I hear that right?
I'm taking from your analogy that it's hard to turn on empathy and compassion in the middle of a turn. If you're under tension, if you're not stable, if you're pushed to the max, and now you want to shift gears into something, it's very difficult to do. So there has to be a solid foundation at some point, or you simply start with. What if compassion and empathy was just your MO from the start? I know I see leaders who get hired into a important position, and they somehow believe this trope that they've got to come on strong and hard, prove themselves. Not authentic. It's not who they are. It's not even their leadership style.
Yeah.
But it's a type of performance.
Yeah. Huh. I had never thought of that analogy there before. I think I'm gonna have to use that when talking with people in the future here. So talk to me a little more about what you do with people in terms of that process, because let's say someone's been listening so far and they say, I get this. I do want to create this greater alignment. They've kind of got this gut feeling down here saying, I do want my people to follow charge into battle with me, not because of me, but because of themselves, because I do want to lead them there. I don't know how to get there. And I suspect that conversation has been had before. Where do you usually start with people? How do you build that foundation so that they are settled, so they can start to make that shift? What are the types of things or exercises? What questions do you ask?
First of all, it's going to come from you first, right? You can't be out there until you're that way. You've got the trust, the compassion, the empathy for yourself, right? You've got to create that foundation. You've got to have those wheels on that curve have to be able to hold you, right? Mm-hmm. So we start with a lot of identity work. Who are we? Because we're all playing games. We're all running rackets out there where we are, running. Pardon my language. I don't know who your audience is here, but I think I can say we're all running bullshit on ourselves, and on each other. So it's around, stripping that down to who we are essentially, getting in touch with what our real innate gifts are, and being able to own that. And then when we realize we're not actually doing that 24/7, in fact, very small amounts of the day are we actually coming from that authentic space.
Yeah.
And so we start to identify, even give fun names to our BS, and look, I have a ton of compassion and empathy for us running these rackets. It is a defense mechanism. We're trying to stay alive. We're trying to stay afloat financially, culturally, etc. And so we've learned how to play games to survive.
Yeah.
But what's the book? What got you there what got you here won't get you there, right? It's time to strip. If you really want to up your leadership game, you're going to strip off and realize what those defense mechanisms are and how they limit you. And once we start to have a sense of your capacity, your strength, your being, and we look at the baloney that you're playing with the world and yourself, and we start to recognize that in shorter and shorter increments of time. I have it that your strength, your empathy and compassion, your connection will come from your authentic being. It will not come from, like I said, schmoozing. And you can get so far by being sweet and charming, but people see through it. We have a great nose as human beings. We know BS when we see it.
So I want to play that back to you a little bit, kind of what I just heard there. I like to talk in terms of stepping up a level higher perspective, right? If I look at myself as someone in my 40s, looking back in my 20s, yeah, I could laugh at that person and say I made lots of mistakes, or I could say, I couldn't have got to my 40s unless I'd gone through my 20s, and given myself the grace to say, I had to. There's no failure. There was only winning and learning, right? I have to learn 1,000 times before I can get to the one win, right? A la Thomas Edison and the light bulb, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think that's what I'm hearing from you is give yourself some grace in terms of understanding that, hey, that journey has happened for a reason, and it's okay that it's taken you as long or as short as it has to get you to where you are, because that puts you in the perfect place. Did I hear that right?
That is self-compassion gives us the opportunity to be okay with what is. If you're stuck in the past, you're hauling this whole bag of lead with you, and if you're always worried about the future, you can't be present either. And to be able to make decisions, to be free, requires us to be in this moment. If I am responding based on what's happened in the past, knee-jerk response, I'm not free. I just did a seminar with Manoj on freedom. How do we peel back the layers and show up now? You might have to make a difficult decision with that employee. They might not want to play. They might not be interested in your empathy and compassion. And you might have to make some decisions, hard decisions. Now, if you're carrying around the thing that says, I'm supposed to be the boss that everybody likes, I can't say that, or I can't do that. If you're saying, I've got to be strong, and this is who I'm supposed to be, then you might not be able to cut them some slack when you realize they just had a tough breakup, and this is why they acted, in an impertinent way with the vendor or whatever. So, if we're carrying around all that stuff from the past, we're not free to make important, proper choices, to be strong, to be clear. In order to hold someone accountable, you've got to bring some oomph with you. That's not going to happen if you've got all these other stories. So, who are you? Who are you not? Getting complete about what's happened, letting go of what might happen, getting present, having a lens to look through. What is your purpose? What does it mean to be leader? Being able to ask yourself questions, being able to let go of things that don't go your way, staying current, staying strong. It sounds easy, but it's not necessarily an easy, trail to walk every day. Finding a trail guide might be a mentor, but finding new trails might require a coach. When we're stuck in what's happened in the trail behind us, we might need a therapist, right? But who will you be? What will you bring to this company? Besides the company, who will you be in your life? What is it that brings you that authentic power? What is it that allows you to show up every day inspired? Because, if you're the leader inspiring your team, who's inspiring you? It gets lonely at the top. A lot of work to be done to get back in touch with yourself every day to reconnect to your purpose so that you can then hand that off to your team.
We've been talking for a little while here, and I think we've talked we connected because of you brought us back to this idea of the blind spots between empathy and compassion, how it ties to the blind spots. I think we did a little bit of talking about that. We talked a little bit about kind of how you talk with people to build that self-compassion, that self-empathy as a foundation, because if you feed yourself, then you can truly feed others. Let's say, and you know, you have introduced me to Manoj Krishna and the Wisdom Project, which I highly ask that anybody who's listening to this, you check that out. I think it's a worthwhile use of your time to look at it. If someone wants to just start on this journey, it's not a journey that you do one time, because as you walk through each doorway, there's another doorway standing in front of you, right? The doorways never stop. You just stop opening doors. That's all.
Yeah.
For someone who wants to start on this journey, give me one, two, three things that you would tell them to start with so they can start that step in the right direction. What would you advise them to do if they don't want to reach out to you, which I also highly recommend that they reach out to you if they got questions.
Yeah, I would say the first three things are reaching out to me, but let's go to the fourth then. Ask yourself some questions. What will it take for me to be okay right here, right now, with everything that's going on? Who do I need to be in order for this to be a growth opportunity? How can what I do next in this predicament also serve my higher purpose in life?
Deep questions. And I think anybody who listens to those three questions, so let me put it this way. The way I think of it is, I am actually not a person in search of the right answers. I'm always in search of the right question to ask, because I can have the right answer to the wrong question. I still have gotten absolutely nowhere. So it's more about the question than it is the answer. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, Tim, and anybody who's listening in is, if you listen to those three questions there, you're going to start asking yourself some questions, and then you're going to say, well, how do I know what I really want? Great question, right? And there's going to be more questions behind that. Well, I'm married, I've got kids, or I'm not married, or I've got 15,000 automobiles, sitting cars, collector's items. Is that what I really want? I don't think anybody has the answer. I think that's internal from where the answer needs to come from, but you got to ask the right questions first. And I think that's what you do, Tim, right? You will help people by being that mirror, that reflection of them, to help them ask those questions. So why are you asking that question? Which allows them to go deeper, because once you start to go deeper, that's when you can truly be self-empathic and self-compassionate. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair statement that as we allow the questions, just allow the question to exist, that opens a door to a great deal of self-compassion.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in what's the experience that you want to have.
Yeah.
Americans, especially in the West, we focus so much on the having, right? When we have that ladder of be, do, have, who do you need to be to take what type of actions, the doing, in order to have, the product that we create. And we're so interested in having things. We're a very materialistic society, but we don't spend as much time, on the being. People say, "Oh, what do I have to do to get that?" Right? Well, who do you have to be? Is my question. And what will the experience be that you have if you do have that, you know, uh, success ratio at work, or the new car, or that, a pretty blonde that you've had an eye on, or some other sort of materialistic, thing that you say you want. What will your experience be?
Yeah.
Whatever that experience is, you can actually start having that now.
And it's that whole dress for success thing, right? If you embody what you believe you are, guess what? It just kind of shows up at your doorstep for you.
I can't scientifically explain
That's
how we manifest, how what we keep in our mind manifests for us. I'm so sorry about that.
yeah.
Um,
That's all right.
it's just
We speak our truth, right? I mean, to that point, right?
yeah, yeah. But it does. I just watched it for so many years, that we produce, that the mind produces somehow out into the world, that there's a way of manifesting our lives, that when we see it and imagine it and feel it and taste it, before it happens, it's more likely to happen. And I can't tell you the physics of that, Vinay. I've just seen it happen all the time.
Well, for anybody who's listening, I hope you really enjoy this conversation. I mean, as much as I like to believe, a lot of these things are things I've thought about and spent so much time on. Every time I have a conversation with Tim, I get a whole nother layer of depth and perspective in what I do. So I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. Feel free to reach out with questions or comments. So thank you for doing that. But Tim, thank you for spending some time with me again, as always. Really enlightening conversation. I feel like we could go for hours on these topics.
We could, and I suppose if we had some specific questions from people, we could answer them more directly.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to hang out with you and to occupy this space together, to tie in all of what we're saying. I feel more empathy and compassion with you as I spend this time with you, and that makes me feel good about myself too. So I've got more of that for me, because we were willing to just open up our hearts and minds, and I didn't have any real idea of where this was going to go, and I didn't really care. I was okay with it being whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I suppose I could have marketed myself more, told people what I do. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, I mean, after listening to this, hopefully you understand what it is that Tim does. If there's a journey that you feel like there's a greater you just sitting unlocked and you can't find the key, Tim is a locksmith. He'll help you unlock it. And I will tell you, you will actually end up fabricating your key yourself. But when you do an apprenticeship with the locksmith, you learn how to fabricate your own keys, right? Create your own keys.
Beautiful way of saying it. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment, Vinay. And we'll hang out on LinkedIn some more. And one of these days, we're actually going to meet in person, won't we?
We will do that in person one day, hopefully very shortly.
I hope so. Excellent.